Hello everyone, welcome to this webinar today where we're going to be looking at the SME Data Systems that I believe SMEs should have. I'm Peter Towers, the Managing Director of ESS BIZTOOLS. Welcome. The silent killer of modern business. This is what the Australian government's then Small Business Ombudsman, Kate Carnell, called debtors' late payments a few years ago, after an international study awarded Australia the very dubious title of having the longest debtors' days outstanding in the world. The Australian, state and territory governments and some big businesses announced that they were improving their debtors' payments to SMEs after this report was published. And 3 years later, the effect of that has been that the debtors' days outstanding has been reduced by 0.4 of a day. Australia probably still has one of the longest debtors' days outstanding in the world. Now, if it's not big government or big business late payments that are causing the debtors' days outstanding crisis, what is it? I think it's time to look at the system for the management of debtors that SMEs are using. Is it fit for purpose? Is the system up to date? Have the people involved in the debtors management been receiving specialised staff training? Have accountants reviewed the effectiveness of the debtors management system? Debtors management is a very important area because of its influence on cash flow. A reduction in debtors' days outstanding benefits the business cash flow, either by giving them more money in the bank or reducing their bank overdraft. It's all going in the right direction. So we recommend accountants should be monitoring the debtors system and the debtors days outstanding figures on an ongoing basis. It should become part of the fabric of an accountant's service to an SME client. Most definitely if the accountant is delivering business advisory services to an SME client. I'm going to take you through the ESS BIZTOOLS SME product package in a moment. If you have any questions during this webinar, can you please type your question into your computer and go to chat and send it to me, and I will answer the questions later in the webinar. If you're watching this presentation on a live feed to Facebook, you won't be able to type in your question to me, but you can send me an email, please, peter@essbiztools.com.au. And if you're watching this video at a later time, which is more suitable to you, obviously, if you have any questions, please send me an email. So I'm now going to take you on to give you an overview of the SME Data Systems package that has been developed by ESS BIZTOOLS to assist in you having a better appreciation. So on our website now, you have from our website, you have our Data Systems manual. ESS BIZTOOLS has 32 product packages in the advanced system package, and these are the products that are listed down on the left-hand side of the screen here, and includes others. We have individual product packages which are also available for subscription at lower costs than the advanced package. So I'm now going to download our SME Data Systems manual that I had partly prepared waiting for you. Our system has a procedure control form which assists with the process of which we recommend that work should be attended to in that order. So I'm just going to share that screen because I'm not sure whether you're able to see it at present. So you should now be able to see the procedure control form. So this guides you through the process of being able to find things. So there's a paper that summarizes this whole approach, which we're going to be looking at shortly, paper 570033. And then there's material that contains checklists and then forms to open an account, personal directors, guarantee forms, letter declining a credit application, internal advice on a new customer, because it's very important that the sales department in particular receives information about a new customer so that they can start their dialogue with that new customer. The personal property securities register is a very big issue when it comes to debtors management, because some businesses can get caught up with claims from liquidators, receivers, or trustees in bankruptcy claiming preferential payments. So we'll come back to that. A due diligence checklist, welcome to new customer letter, welcome to new customer letter where there's retention of title, and so on. Debt recovery letters, strategies to make sure we're paid on time, etc. So I'm now going to bring up a couple of these forms, and then we'll go to the main body of the information that we're going to show you. The application to open an account. Is the form which will guide you through the process that a new customer should be completing so that the client receives all of the information that they require on this new customer. And it's very important that this process works. I think one of the problems that a lot of Australian SMEs have is that they're not doing enough due diligence on their would-be new customer. They just basically accept whoever walks in the door without undertaking any due diligence reviews on them. This form forms part of that process because it's asking numerous questions that do vary depending on whether the applicant's a partnership, a company, or a sole trader. But it's giving the, or a trust, it's giving the supplier, your client, if you're the accountant, the type of information they needed. What type of facility are they applying for? And they sign off on that they're acknowledging the terms of trade that the business has established. There's a form to give some explanation as to the personal property securities register. That's an attachment which we haven't quite got at this yet. There's a welcome to new customer letter, which can be sent out to the new customer, welcoming them to the organisation, advising them of the credit limit that's been established, the terms of payment, and any other information that's needed. Internal advice of a new customer, I think, is also very important, because this would be going to the sales department and telling them that someone new has joined as a customer. Obviously, it's someone new they can then be contacting. They may have made some representations to this business previously, so it's nice to know that they have accepted those invitations to become a customer. But the sales department might want to talk to them about a special promotion they've got on, go and show them a range of products, and generally talk to a new customer. There's welcome to new customer letters that include retention of titles. So this is where the business wants to at least have the right and to have the right documentation to be able to register this customer on the personal property securities register if they wish. Our suggestion is normally they would be taking into account how critical the potential lack of payments from this customer or the basis of having to repay part of the payments that they'd received from a particular customer in the previous 6 months if they receive a demand which is then proven in a court from a liquidator alleging preferential payment. This can happen and it can cause a lot of problems for a business. We've got a letter to decline credit application and other forms. So now what I want to do is show you the actual debtors system. So this is the SME Data System that you would be able to badge as having been prepared by an accounting firm and name the client that you've prepared it for. So this is a set of templates that you would conduct a due diligence review on the client's current data system, ascertain what changes need to be made, and then produce a written system. Why? Because in our observation, the vast majority of SMEs do not have a written debtors system. Someone is given the job of being in charge of debtors, normally the last person employed. There's no real training. The system is probably some stickers on the side of computer screens or desks, and maybe some notes that have been changed quite a few times in handwriting that has been handed down to them. And that's the debtor system. They got no appreciation of what this thing called personal property securities register is, or what the terms of trade agreement and why it's got to be signed, or the retention of title agreement and why it's got to be signed. The whole process is fragmented. There needs to be an understanding of the individual customer's requirements when they've signed on with the business as to what information needs to be sent with the tax invoice when it's sent to them. Because some people specify they require health certificates, others require weighbridge certificates. All of this information needs to be looked at to make sure that the right information is being sent out. So you can see from the index that I'm going through, there's a fair bit of information in this system, but this is what's included within debtors. You would, in fact, personalize this for this particular business by putting their name into the system and making changes if they're calling some of the documents slightly different names to what we've reflected in these templates. I remember when I was a very young accountant undertaking an audit at a very big organization, and I was looking for the cash receipts book because that's what it was called in the audit program that I was working from. And I was to check the entries in the cash receipt book. Well, I asked about 6 people for the cash receipt book and no one had it. No one knew what I was talking about. We haven't got a cash receipt book. I got told by 6 of those people. Then sometime later, after I'd gone on to start doing something else, which I was able to find that book, a young lady walked over to me and said, "Are you after the green book?" And I said, "What's the green book?" Well, she said, "Someone told me you're looking for something called a cash receipt book. We haven't got that, but we've got a green book, and I think it might have the summaries that you're looking for." This young lady was doing a bookkeeping course. So I was very impressed because I finally got the book And I made sure I changed the audit manual, the audit program, to reflect that in brackets, it's called a green book, because that's what they had their whole system color-coded. And so if that is occurring in a client in their debtor system, you would change the templates to reflect that, so that this is a system that the people who are using it can feel some comfort with. It's been adjusted to suit their requirements, and the terminology is what they are conversant with. So there's an introduction to effective debtors management. So we're trying to give a story and tell whoever's got this job that why it's important. What are the main documents? The director's guarantee documentation, very important. But then those guarantees have got to be filed, so that if there is an unfortunate event in 3, 4, or 10 years' time, that documentation can be found. Otherwise, it's all a waste of time. The welcome to new customer letter. I think it's very important because it's conveying the terms of trade, the trade limit, and the processes from the company, but also it can introduce your client's business to this new customer. Perhaps there should be a letter signed by the CEO or general manager that goes with it. The retention of title clauses are very important for businesses, whether they're using personal property securities register registration or not. So they should be completed and sent. If they're using them for the personal property securities register purposes, they need them signed and returned promptly, because there's a limit of about 20 days to get these documentations processed so they can be utilized to process a registration on the PPSR. What's the system for the preparation of tax invoices? That's what I was referring to a little earlier. It's the customer specified particular conditions. Are they saying that they want all tax invoices for the previous month by the 7th day of the next month? Always check whether it's working days or just days, because many businesses will not pay if those tax invoices turn up one day late. Over the years, I've had various people come to me about debtors management, and a person will say, well, my mate's getting paid in about 38, 40 days, and I'm up around 80 or 90 days. And they're basically supplying the same customer. They're in the same industry. And when I inquire, I found that the customer had specified that invoices had to be received by a specific date. And if they weren't, well, they just get rolled over to the next month. And if that specification also said they were late, but it also wanted some additional information attached, well, if that hasn't been attached, it's probably getting rolled over for about 2 more months. So people need to have clearly understood and to have documented what the requirements are, so that the person handling the invoices and the debtors is very familiar with these requirements and make sure these documents are sent. Otherwise, they won't get paid. A debtor's days outstanding calculation should be calculated every month. Preparation of list of debtors to be followed up. And this should be coordinated at high level in the business to make sure it's happening. We've got some comments on debtors financing. So this is all a crucial part of cash flow management in every business. We've got a debtors management system checklist, which is part of the system, which will take you through all the types of issues that I'm discussing as we go through this, so that they can be ticked off and made sure that they happen. So setting up an effective debtors management system. We're saying here your accountant can assist if they need any changes made in these letters. You notice we're including a declining a credit application. I think that's important, because you never know who that person you're declining is. You don't know where they work. You don't know what influence they have. So always be courteous and send them a letter back, and as far as you can, tell them the reasons and very nicely decline their application if you're not going to accept them as a new customer. The credit application form, I showed you before, there's just some notes on it there now to make sure that the person handling the debtors understands the system. And we've talked about the debtors guarantee form. Filing of those documents is very important. Internal advice to the sales department. We've seen the form, but we need to make sure that the person handling the debtors understands this. We got some brief information here about the personal property securities register, because a significant percentage of the people who administer debtors probably got no idea what the personal property securities register is. This gives them the opportunity to have some understanding and also to understand the seriousness of this whole process. And debtors' problems can become a significant area under the personal property securities register. Due diligence checklist to make sure that everything's been undertaken. Approving a prospective customer. I don't think it just should go to the person in charge of the debtors. That person's undoubtedly involved in reviewing the paperwork that's been submitted, but it then should be referred to the office manager, or perhaps in some businesses, depending on the amount of money involved, to the general manager for approval. And that's when the welcome to new customer letter is produced, or the letter advising that they're not going to be offered an account. So there's a fair bit of information there. We've then got some notes on being diligent on transactions, and this is crucial for lowering the debtors' days outstanding. Because, as I've said earlier, if the customer has specified they require certain documentation before they make payment, well, it's up to your client to make sure that that documentation is supplied to that customer. Otherwise, they won't get paid. And that can blow debtors' days outstanding way out. Tax invoices are very important. And I recommend to everyone I talk to that in a very prominent space on the tax invoice in very large print, the due date for payment is shown, because you should be encouraging your clients to pay on the due date of an invoice, not when they happen to receive the statements. Debtor statements. Now, some people don't send debtor statements anymore. If that's going to be your client's policy, that needs to be communicated very clearly to all the customers, but in particular to any new customers, so they know they're paying on invoices, not on the statement, because they're not going to get a statement. But if people are sitting back waiting for a statement to turn up, they will not make payments. And that will delay the payments being made and therefore increase debtors' days outstanding. But if your client is issuing statements, they need to be issued promptly, because most people who receive statements wait until they get the statement so they can reconcile the invoices or credit notes and payments that have been made against the statement to make sure everything's right. So they wait for it. So if your client is not very efficient in the processing of the statements, and they take 3.5 weeks to get sent out, well, that customer will probably be waiting and waiting and waiting to get that statement, and will definitely not be making any payments in that time period. The other crucial document to get out to a customer is the tax invoice. And I think it should be sent by email on the day the delivery of services is made, and the due date of payment is clearly stated on it, so that they've got it. They know they've got to make that payment. If you wait to send a summary of the invoices, a group of them, over 4 weeks, you're delaying the possibility of educating that customer to start making payments in accordance with the invoice's due date. And one of the key aims in all this should be to reduce debtors' days outstanding, which is the dubious award that Australia won 3 years ago, because we had the longest debtors' days outstanding in the world, and that was a survey of 80 countries. So the positive monitoring of debtors, you can use online debt management systems, or you can install your own system where you contact by message the customer 3 or 4 days before the due date for a payment. We all receive these days, don't we? Why can't your clients be sending them out to their customers, reminding people that a particular invoice, not a statement, an invoice is due for payment? If the payment's not made within a specified period, in the notes we've said 7 days, you might change that, but not any longer, I wouldn't have thought. A senior person, preferably someone that made the sale, should be on the phone to that customer to try to get them to make payment, because I don't think a sale's completed under the amount shown on the sales invoice has been paid. And what this action will do is very quickly bring to a head any complaints, any criticisms, any requests for additional information from the customer. If you let it wait and you don't make contact, they probably aren't going to make contact with you. And that further and further delays the payment. And in the end of it, it might be a bad debt. And that is not very satisfactory at all. So we got in there some suggested processes for getting payment, and we have some letters in the system. As I've just indicated, account queries should be answered as soon as possible. And that's another reason for sending by email the tax invoices every day as they are raised, with the due date for payment on them, because that is going to create some degree of urgency in the customer's mind that if they want to query something, they need to do it promptly. Overdue accounts should be investigated and followed up. It's very important that as soon as possible after the end of the month, the debtors stage analysis is prepared. So that would be 24 to 48 hours after the end of the month. A full list is prepared, the debtors days outstanding is calculated, and the leadership team can consider the debtors position. And most definitely anything in the 60 days and over column should be going to key members of the leadership team for them to take responsibility for contacting the customers to get those payments. Not left to some young clerical person or old clerical person tucked away in the back area of the office to be responsible for this. Because they've really got no clout whatsoever with your client's customers to make sure that they will pay. Strategies to assist being paid, we've got them listed. I think we've talked about most of them as we've been working through this manual. The proactive management of debtors. Try and spot problem debtors. You really don't want them. If you find out in that first month that these people are going to be a problem area, well, communication should be made to the senior management, who can then decide what they're going to do, which should be to dispense supplying services to them. If they haven't complied in that first month or 2 months with the terms of trade that you specified, you're going to have long-term problems, or your client is. And it's very important you're not the banker for your clients. We've talked about calculating debtors days outstanding. That should be a very important key performance indicator. All of the leadership team should know that figure, obviously the person handling debtors, and it should be monitored 1 month compared to the previous months, compared back to what the budget amount is. How can it be reduced? A lot of it's to do with cutting out queries by making sure the system has supplied the information the customer wants. Secondly, it's sending the tax invoices promptly. Thirdly, it's making sure that towards the end of the month, invoices are there before the cutoff date. If you're supplying the customer with a debtor statement, they want a debtor statement, make sure it's sent before the monthly cutoff. So there needs to be a degree of urgency around the end of the month to get this information out. We got some comments there about look out for warnings. People stop making payments. They make queries on frivolous items. They start paying round sums of money. Communication is very important in this process. Getting onto the customer very quickly. You haven't made payment. What's wrong? Do you need some extra information? And each month there needs to be a timetable. What's the close-off date? The statements, or I have all the invoices gone by email. Are the statements ready to go by email within 48 hours after the end of the month? And is there then a review meeting within a couple of days at the end of the month so that the leadership team can decide who's going to collect what money? So that's how the debtor system works. And it takes you through the whole process to ensure that you are able to influence, as the accountant, your client to put in a very good system, because the overall aim has got to be to reduce the sundry debtors balance, to get that cash back to work for the business. It will be reflected either as cash in the bank or as a reduction in the business's bank overdraft. I'm just going to check to see if I've got any questions. I don't see that I have any. So if you think of a question later on that you would like answered, please send me an email, peter@essbiztools.com.au. So at this stage, I'm going to go back to our system and try to find I've covered everything that I wanted to talk about. I thought there was a couple of other things, but they're not there. So this system is available. We do have a special at present from ESS BIZTOOLS that you can subscribe for. We call it a beginner's package. It's available for $795, and it gives you access to 7 product packages that you can utilize. If you're interested, please go to our website, www.essbiztools.com.au. So thank you very much for being with us today. And I hope that we've given you an overview of how the SME Data Systems works. And I look forward to hearing from you. To visit our website, please go to www.essbiztools.com.au. Have a great day. Goodbye.